All right, good evening. It is Wednesday night. We're almost to the end of another month. Can you believe how fast the time is flying by? You know, this is Life, Love, and Lessons, and we're here tonight because COVID is real. We're stuck in our homes, and some of us are going a little stir crazy. We learned last week that it's very important to feel and think before you do, from Judge Lynn. And we're going to keep turning it up each week, bringing you information that you need, but in a fun and lively format because you need to hear it. And sometimes you can't get the appointments that you need. So welcome to Life, Love, and Lessons. Let's meet our co-host and our expert panelist. We've got Dr. Ish Major. Dr. Ish is co-host of Marriage Boot Camp. He is a world-renowned international psychiatrist and named one of the world's leading doctors. We also have Judge Lynn. Judge Lynn has many years on divorce court, so she knows about everything that's happening in the nation, and she is a family expert as well, and she joins Dr. Ish in helping hip-hop's finest straighten it out on national television. And we have Alyssa Gruber, psychologist, trauma and addiction specialist, Zen healer, advocate, author, humanitarian, and myself, college professor, entrepreneur, mom, lots of other things, but most importantly, I'm a friend and I'm just like you. I just want everyone to get the information they need. I'm Louisa Eyler, and this is Life, Love, and Lessons. You know, when we think about anger in the world today, there's just so many things that we're seeing. And today, I think it was today, on Judge Lynn's Facebook or on her Instagram chat this morning, she was talking about how sometimes people are just angry. And I think there was an incident in some type of store with somebody not wearing a mask where somebody was literally pissed. I think they actually peed on the floor. And when we talk about how angry people are getting today, you know, Judge Lynn, reflect on what you're seing and what are people posting and what are your thoughts in general about all that?
You know, and I don't know if I'm spending too much time looking at that stuff because it fascinates me that what people decide to do when they're fed up. But I honestly believe, and actually all of y'all are better to answer this than I am, but I honestly believe that when people are faced with something they can't fight, they decide to fight something that they can face. So they can't knock out COVID with their fists. So they take their frustration and send it. They don't know where the mad is supposed to go. They're scared about the conflicts going on in the streets about Black Lives Matter. They're scared about the COVID, and they're scared about their economics, and they're scared about the election. Either side you're on, you scared because it's a big decision, and they can't fix all the rest of that. So they want to manage their lives in a way that nobody puts something else in their life that they can't control. So that's how they end up peeing in the middle of Verizon.
Do you think it's all about control, or is it something more?
I think people at their base, just, you know, I was just a judge, but I think people need to control to feel okay. Fear is a monster. Fear is right down in the middle of that brain, and it's one of the first things. Fear looks at everything before you see anything. So when you lack control, your fear center is just working overtime, and that sucker is hardy, fast, but it's very sloppy. It doesn't know what to be afraid of, and it can just once it makes you register fear. I always say that politicians, once they can scare you first, they can get you to do anything, because once they scare you, they can tell you how to solve that fear, even though it's not true, but they can say, stop liking the Asians and everything will be all right.
Mm-hmm. Did you see a lot of that on divorce? Did you see a lot of that on divorce court where people were really afraid? So they're coming in there to argue, but at the core of it, they're scared.
I saw it more on when I was a criminal judge. I was a criminal judge for 10 years, and I saw it more there, that the anger is displaced. I mean, how did you end up hitting the guy in the bakery? Well, you know, and it had nothing to do with that cupcake, but it had something to do with something else. So right. I saw it a lot in criminal court because that's where people were popping other people.
Yeah, and Judge, you're exactly right. We know that those protests that the folks were having for that short period of time weren't because they were angry they couldn't get a haircut or get their hair done, right? They were scared because the virus was something unseen. I can't wrap my hands around it. I can't control it. I can't protect myself from it. So let me redirect that towards something that I can. And that's just how it comes out. You're spot on with that.
Especially in our culture, we're a soundbite culture. So I actually think that people like to break down their fear into sound bites that they feel like they can manage. So I always think about fear. If we're really in anger and really handling things straight on, that can be healthful. But everything coming out sideways at these micro targets is where things start to get problematic. It's like Swiss cheese. It's like exactly what you said. You're in the bakery yelling at somebody when really you're scared that you're not going to be able to send your kid to school next year.
Exactly.
The car wash saying something antagonistic when really inside you're really afraid that you're a failure. So it's that sidewaysness, that sieve of anger that sort of seeps out, which I think is really problematic.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, Dr. Ish, do you think that's what happens in relationships? That sort of your partner gets angry at you and then they don't know what to do. And then inside they're secretly afraid. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about that. And then how do you fix it when it happens?
Yeah, I think, so I think that's part of it, right? The fear comes out in many, many different ways, some ways that we think are appropriate, some ways not. But I think for relationships in particular, the first issue that we have there is don't assume that your partner is actually mad, right? That's the wrong assumption to make. And so the first thing you need to do is a really cool little trick. Just reflect to them what you're seeing, because they may not realize how they're coming off. Say, hey, I've done it in my personal life. It works great. You know what? You seem really aggravated. Is that right? Are you aggravated? And then you may be surprised. They'll be like, well, actually, no, I'm not aggravated. I'm just a little, and now you can, because what you really want, and I've heard just say this on the show many times, what you really want in those moments is clarification, right? What is it that you're really feeling? And a lot of times until you reflect that back to somebody in the heat of the moment, they may not know themselves, but that gives them a moment to say, oh, okay, no, this actually, I'm not angry. Actually, I'm just a little aggravated because of this. And then you can have the discussion. And you got to understand, right? Anger it's not a primary emotion. So let's figure out what's happening underneath there. And, maybe they're hurt. These days, we're just scared, right? And so that's what's going on. But it comes out in many different ways. So what we're seeing with a lot of couples is their coping mechanisms based on COVID, based on, what protests are going on in the street, based on economy. A lot of those coping mechanisms are clashing. So let's say you've got a partner, right? Husband, wife, two partners, whatever. You're in the house. One partner is, I'm going to hunker down and we're going to bunker it up and I'm not going nowhere and doing anything. And then another partner is, well, you know what? I got to get some air. I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to put a mask on. I'm going to do everything I can. But every time your partner now comes back home from outside, you view them as a threat, right? Their coping is to go get some air and to go be exposed, in their own way. But you view their behavior now as a threat. And they view your behavior, I can't be with somebody who's just going to sit here all day and do nothing. So now your behaviors are threatening each other. And that's causing a lot of explosions. We're seeing that. A study came out last week. What is the number one question that's being asked during the time of COVID? Answer, why do you do it that way? Right? Number one question being asked in the time of COVID, why do you do it? Why do you do it that way? Why are you washing dishes like? Because again, what we're all really doing is we're constantly confronted with our mortality, and the finality of this thing is we are doing constant threat assessments. Why do you wash the dishes that way? That can't be clean. And if that's not clean, I might get sick. You're a threat to me. Why do you, right? All of these things. And so here's my tip for couples who are asking that question. Instead of asking, why do you do it that way? Just say, hey, I've never noticed that before. Let's talk about it.
Oh, well, if we go with what you said, but what you taught us last week, you should really say, isn't that interesting?
Right?
That you do it that way.
I never noticed that. That's so interesting. That's interesting. I've never noticed that you walk sometimes and you have your mask under your nose. That's so interesting. Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about it.
So great about that. You're so brilliant. And what I love about that curiosity is also you can ask yourself, like, when did I pick up this protocol? And is it certain to me? Because I know there are days when I am totally bossy pants. I don't mean to be, but it's a result of my anxiety. I mean, I sometimes feel like I want to give out the Alyssa handbook to everybody around me so they'll all accord with the way I think things should go. And when I start feeling really dug in, it means I'm afraid. The more attached I get to my point of view and the ways I think the dishes should be washed or the hand sanitizer should be used, it lets me know that I'm just having a deeper conversation with myself around fear.
I think that's a valid point, because I think what happens is some people aren't able to express what they really need. For example, one of the questions I wanted to ask you after watching multiple episodes of Marriage Boot Camp is, do you think that people argue just so that they can ignite their passion and have makeup sex?
That's a great question. I think on some level they do. I don't think they're very aware of it, right? Because a lot of times people, and Judge, you know, you've seen it. We've had couples come in there, they get addicted to the cycle, right? To the cycle of explosion. You've got the period of escalation. We're going up the roller coaster. Then boom, we got the explosion. Now we're rocking and rolling. And then we got the honeymoon, and the honeymoon feels nice, right? Because you get to make up, and people get to soothe me in ways that I've taught them how to soothe me. And, you know, and that explosion feels good too, because you get that adrenaline rush, you get the dopamine. Sometimes I get to break stuff, you know what I mean? I get to act like I'm 5, and then we put it all back in the pot. And so a lot of times we see people just get addicted to the cycle, sometimes just because they don't know how to get off. But then the other thing is, our brains are creatures of habit, right? And so if that's our habit, even though it's a habit that's not really serving us, like Alyssa said, well anymore, it's the thing our brain knows how to do. Hey, I know how to get through a Friday night when we kick a few back, and then we start rocking and rolling, and we got to clean up the mess on a Saturday morning. So people just really need to be able to take a step or two back, just take a breath. Like Judge always says, take a pause, and then you can kind of disrupt the pattern, because it's really, we're all just getting stuck in our own pattern.
And that brings us to something that we wanted to do at the beginning of each and every show, which is setting the intentions. Not only setting the intentions for this next few minutes while we're sitting here together talking about things that can ultimately help us, but things that can help us right now in these next few minutes as we dial in and focus on the moments that we've decided that we're worthy of learning a few things about the world and about our own mental health awareness that are going to make us ultimately better capable of loving ourselves. So Alyssa, why don't you talk about how do we pause anger and dial back and de-escalate?
So I just wanted to say one thing about anger that I think is important and I think about and talk about a lot. Anger, as Dr. Ish said, is a secondary emotion. Anger, if we look at it, is just that. It's just an emotion. Let's not conflate anger with conflict and violence, okay? Because anger on its own can be productive and generative. It's when it's misplaced and leads to accelerated conflict and violence that it becomes problematic. If you're in the heat of the moment, right, which we've been all, you know, you're in the heat of the moment, everything in your body starts doing one of two things, moving towards fight or moving towards flight. So your whole central nervous system is all on high alarm. Your cortisol levels, your adrenals, they're all working overtime, pumping all these sort of enlivened hormones through your body. So it's not just a case of de-escalating mentally. You actually have to look at what your body is doing to accelerate that anger. So literally in moments where you feel out of control, that you actually are almost dissociative with your rage, the most important thing that you can do, and every one of us has said it in our own way, is to pause, to stop and really, really remove yourself from the situation, even if that means physically walking out of the room. Now, if this is something where you are alone and just notice a tide of like angry feelings roll in, again, anger can be a friendly companion as long as it doesn't become this thing that you drag around like a 900-pound weight, you know. Anger is something that you can use to insight into your own life. So if you need the pause, start with the body, start with the breath, take some deep breaths. Judge Lynn, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, I'm a big fan of the pause, and I'm into that, but absent the pause, the anger will happen. I mean, you know what I mean? If you don't pause, your body takes over and does with you. I believe that in order to facilitate the pause, because a lot of people have a problem with the pause, they can't find it for the life of them. The time to decide not to get angry about anything is before you get angry about anything. So you have to practice. You have to, every morning, my husband gets a weather report. Who you waking up to next? Who you waking up next to, baby? Is it bitch Lynn? Is it passionate Lynn? Is it frightened Lynn? Is it sad Lynn? But when I give him a weather report, I'm also giving me a weather report. Watch yourself. Today's not a good day. Your anger is up. Your fear is up. And then you check in with yourself throughout the day. And when you're going to go outside, you adjust. When I go outside now, fools abound. I know what I'm going to say to the mask shamers. I mean, it's always going to be positive, but I have run through those things in my head. And the more that we prepare, like, I'm going to go out and meet, I was like, I'm going to go out and meet this. You know, it helps.
Yeah, because that's what both of you have been talking about. Last week, Judge Lynn, you talked about taking your own temperature and really knowing where you are in this moment. And that always circles back to what Alyssa's saying week after week over. You have to be present in this moment. And one of the things that stands out to me is, so you do all those things and you're present in this moment, and then you tell yourself, did all the right things, but guess what? I'm still pretty angry.
Well, let me speak to that, because I think that what Judge Lynn is saying is so important. Look, I don't think there's just this adorable little button that you can push and take a pause and then Tweety birds are around your head. Let me be really clear. I have anger that can burn some stuff down. I can be incendiary. I've had to work on that my whole life. I know exactly what to say that will cut you to the quick. And I'll be on about my day and you'll be thinking about it 17 years later with tears in your eyes. So I do not think it's like, oh, we're just going to pause and everything's adorable. What I'm saying is we are all creatures of incredible patterning. And to say that we don't know our own patterns is actually a deep untruth. We know them. We just don't know what to do about them. So for what you're saying, once you pause, what do you do then?
Yeah, you must be reading my mind, Alyssa, because what I was going to ask Dr. Ish was, you know, are some people never angry, part one? And then part two is, like I've seen on Marriage Boot Camp, and I keep bringing it up because maybe I'm traumatized by watching it, but you know, I think like 2 episodes ago, they had the destruction of property where they were out there with hammers, like, you know, hammering signs. So maybe you could just, you know, talk about, where does it originate? Is destruction of property really helpful? And, you know, can some people never experience anger?
Yeah, I think we're all human, right? And so first of all, let me apologize for the traumatization with this Marriage Boot Camp. But after that, yeah, we're human, right? Everybody gets angry, and everybody should allow themselves the space to feel that anger when it's appropriate, right? So the problem is, socially, a lot of us wonder whether it's acceptable or appropriate to show it, right? Because a lot of us know that showing it may mean that some people won't like it. It may mean that some people may get afraid. And it may mean that I, in turn, won't be liked. And so if I'm not liked, there's a chance I'm not going to get love. And if I'm not liked and I'm not loved, then that's going to make me very, very anxious. And as opposed to doing that, so that means that anger is going to get twisted and it's going to come out in very different ways. So remember, we've been talking about it's not a primary emotion. Okay, Doc, so what are the primary emotions? Happiness, sadness, fear, and surprise. So as Judge and Alyssa are talking about doing that self-check, getting that weather report, you need to get where is this anger is blowing in from where? Is it blowing in from because I'm happy? Probably not. Is it blowing in because I'm sad? That's a good, yeah, that happens a lot. Is it blowing in because I'm fearful today? What is that? Go through that. Is it blowing in because I'm surprised? I am OCD like a champ. Sometimes surprises make me very, very angry because I don't like it. I didn't know it was coming. So do that weather report. What's that?
That it wasn't in your guidebook.
Right, wasn't in the guidebook, right? What's going on here? Even if it's a plus one. And so understand that, right? Because what we're really talking about is how do those defense mechanisms kick in, right? This is the thing I'm feeling, but I don't know if it's appropriate to show that. So I'm going to let it come out, and I'm going to try to mask that or control it in some, am I going to repress it? Am I going to push it down? Am I going to project it and say, you know what, Alyssa, I'm not angry at all. Actually, it's you who must be mad because this, right? So that's a whole thing. Am I just going to deny it? Right? Am I going to regress and I'm going to throw a little tantrum and act like a baby for a little while? You know, am I going to rationalize it? Am I going to displace it? Am I going to, right? Typical example, boss chews you out. So you come home and you shove the dog, right? I hate that example because it's violence to animals, but right, that's displacing. And it wasn't appropriate for me to show the anger here, but I'm going to come out and show it here. Some folks, we know that there's some people out there who just can't say no and have to agree to every little thing in every relationship they have. That's what we call reaction formation. I'm angry, but I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna say I'm happy and I'm smiling and I'm okay with it. When we talk about people being passive aggressive, where do you think that's coming from, right? There's some deep-seated anger and resentment that's coming out in this very passive. I didn't think it was appropriate for me to show you it all at this time, honey, so I just turned off the hot water and didn't tell you there wasn't going to be any tonight, right? So it's all those different things. So that's what we're really talking about. Is it ever appropriate to destroy property? Well, now, you know, it's really not. The appropriate thing is understanding, like Judge said, understand your weather report. Where's it coming from, right? And deal with it and know that it doesn't make you a bad person because you feel this way.
I love also, just as a woman, somebody identifies as a woman, I think it's really important for women to also understand that it is not culturally sanctioned for women to be angry.
Right.
The word bitch is basically telling women your anger is not approved by our general culture. Your anger, we don't like. And I think that culturally women, and this is not to say women alone, to be clear, there are many marginalized groups who have undergone tremendous suppression over the years, but I think women really have a hard time with anger and don't condone it in themselves. So it's this indoctrination in the world, this you're a bitch if you're angry or have a voice or have an opinion, is so readily communicated to young girls and teenage girls that finding their voice is often really difficult. And a woman who expresses anger somehow has a problem. And I think that's something that is much bigger than this dialogue, but something just to put a pin in, to remember that anger looks different. And what we're taught about anger as young children is often what we believe about anger going forward. And I think that women, as they grow emotionally, especially through divorce or different things in their life, finding a voice that's not always codependent and happy, and not being passive aggressive, but being direct and communicative is actually tremendous growth. So I can't speak to the male experience, but as a woman, that anger, you know, code, I think we need to dismantle systemically.
Look at Judge Lynn, she's shaking her head. She must have a lot of different things she could share about the difference in anger between men and women and within couples, and maybe some stories of angry couples, or even righting wrongs, people that knew they were wrong and then had to fix it, you know. What can you say about any of that?
Yeah, I just want to co-sign on.
Cool. Hang on, Judge Lynn, you're frozen for a minute.
Judge Lynn, we can't hear you.
Judge Lynn, maybe move your mouse and like it'll give your computer a kick.
Uh-oh, did we lose her?
No.
Oh, she's still there. Oh, maybe she'll come right back.
You know, and while we're waiting on Judge Alyssa, the other thing I'll piggyback on is, like you said, there are, you know, different groups, but within women in general, there's that, you know, now when you look at only Black women, there's that stereotypical angry Black woman, right? And women in particular, Black women for sure, but it allows people to have a single story about what you're feeling, right? And when we can have a single story about what you're feeling, it makes it very easy for us to dismiss it. Oh, that's just, you're just being bitchy. You're just being an angry woman. Now it makes it very easy for me to dismiss it because I don't have to go through the nuance and understand why it is you're feeling that way. So it's just a slippery slope both ways.
It really is. And the very fact that there's a phraseology, angry Black woman.
Right.
The fact that in the world, there was somebody thought necessity to label the behavior in
Right.
that way is so limiting and so
Right.
superficial and honestly kind of disgusting to me.
Right. It's just icky.
It is. It's like one of these things where it's like some sort of shortcut to untruth and
Right.
discrimination and yuckiness. So, oh, you're back. Hi, we missed you.
Hey, Judge.
I had to turn it off and turn it back on. I didn't know.
Jump in.
Uh-oh.
I don't know what jumping in. Did you? Am I gone again?
I
Nope,
think
I hear you.
Yeah, you're in and out and a little bit frozen.
It's me.
it must be the 5G.
I'm gonna have to reboot my. No, continue without me. I'm gonna reboot my.
Okay, we'll look for you. We'll look for you to come back. Come back and join
Okay.
us in a minute.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's something also that I think is really fascinating. And Dr. Ishmael, Louisa, I'd love your opinions on this. Like, how do we equip our children with conflict resolution skills so that as adults, they're not just playing catch up? Like, I really wish that there were more conflict resolution and mindfulness curriculum in our households and in our schools and just culturally, because, you know, I think it's an awful shame that like people get to adulthood realizing they have no idea how to face their own anger and feelings.
Yeah.
So, you know, putting that.
That's a good point. I think some parents, because they're trying to be good parents, right? You want to shelter your kids from anything painful. You want to shelter them from the fear. You want to shelter them from the extremes of emotion. You want to shelter them from those conflicts. But in doing so, it kind of robs them of the ability to see it played out in real time, right? Kids learn what they live. And so if they can see it, now I'm not saying you need to have those knockdown, drag out fights in front of your kids. No, but I'm saying don't shelter them from it, because kids are extremely perceptive, especially what's going on in the house or with what's happening at school. So I think you've got to, as a parent, pick and choose what conflicts you think are acceptable to help work them through when it comes to resolution. Hey, you know, and then from there, that gives them an idea that not only is it acceptable to have disagreements, acceptable to have different points of views, but it is actually also workable because we can work our way through it and still come out as friends on the other side. And so, it's, you know, you got to understand what you need to shelter your kids from, and then what you need to let them be exposed to so they know how to work through it. Like Alyssa, by the time you're ready to hit the door.
Yeah, I love the phraseology that I think is really helpful, and it's just like a little tag phrase you can keep top of mind, is rupture and repair.
Yeah.
Rupture and repair.
Yeah.
That's healthful. Things are going to rupture. You're not going to get along with everybody, especially during this time when people are on your last nerves. And those people are the people you love the most, that you
Yes.
call family, that you want to put in the backyard and say,
Right.
you know, go sleep outside.
Right.
It's your heart. It's
Right.
the rupture. It's the repair. And
Right.
I think that repair requires humility too. Like
Yeah.
it requires the ability to say, you know, here's where I'm not perfect yet. Here's where I'm still growing and learning. I notice though that when I'm anxious, I'm more prone to snap. Like,
Right.
or I notice that when I feel bad about my work situation, I'm more cranky and short-tempered. Like just having these insights about ourselves and sharing them with the people around us allows everybody not to take our own stuff so personally. And I think that's really important too with anger. Like,
Yeah, that's super important, because when you think about it, when you think about how many people watched this show over the last week, and what you don't realize is the feedback that I get from the Facebook messages or the emails that come in, people are saying that, you know, the tiny things that you've said here have changed my whole day, and then they change your whole week. And it's like that impulse changes everything. So I think that's what it boils down to. And Judge Lynn, you've been waiting so patiently, in and out. The floor is yours.
Now I don't know what's going on. I don't know what we talk. I know we're talking about kids and.
We were
young
waiting
people
for you to
arguing.
talk to us about, you know, when you think about making up for things that have been done wrong, and how there's conflict between couples and that different male-female view,
Mhm.
you know, how do you resolve conflict? You know, how do you take the anger and all of that?
Well, let me tell you what I did wrong for 15 years is I felt obligated to create the peace.
Mm.
Do you know what I'm saying? That was
Yeah.
my gig, you know? And I grew up in a house with a dad. My pops was bipolar, and mom's job was make sure that nobody died that night. You know what I mean? Everybody got to bed, didn't nobody get hurt. If we couldn't go to bed, we went out the window. That was her gig. Yep. And I thought that was my gig, not to allow my husband to get angry, not knowing full well that he can get angry and he ain't gonna break out no windows, ain't nobody gonna die, you know, and she's just gonna get it. And I got stuck making everything okay. And one day I realized I had completely lost my voice. Yeah. And here I was on TV. I was a judge for 10 years, putting people in jail. I was on TV and get home and I had no voice because I took that role on. And I think women are often feel the need to make everything okay. And it's okay if things are not okay. And if your house is a little rumbly, it's not just your job to fix it. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it
100%. It's like Codependent No More is this great book written in the 90s. And basically what it talks about is like this incredible, almost pathological need to feel safe only when everybody's emotional needs around you have been solved by you.
Right.
Exhausting, because actually, here's the irony in all of it. Here's the little secret they don't tell you. As you're making everybody else feel better, you start feeling worse.
Well, that's just it. And to your point about the children, so you live what you learn. And so if as a parent, you're secretly not okay, you're trying to take everybody else, better care of everybody else than you do of yourself, and you haven't made yourself a priority, and then there's chaos and anger and all this stuff going on in your house that you think is unmanageable. Next time, instead of putting the kids in timeout, put yourself in timeout, you know? Go out, put yourself in the closet, make yourself a war room like the movie, put your notes on the wall, get your journal, whatever you need to do to remove yourself so that you force yourself into that pause to kind of really ease into, because how you dole out discipline, it can either be a learning experience or it can be a traumatic event. And you've got to decide what you want that experience to look like, because discipline in its truest form is the road to really becoming a better version of yourself. But when it is done not with love, but with anger or with hatred or with tiredness, that's not discipline, that's punishment. And there's a difference.
Yeah, it's an important distinction. I think that we are all responsible for ourselves. And if I can teach my kids anything, it's to really, really have agency around their own lives and their own voice. There's no striving for perfection. I think it's really important just to know that these are emotions, they're completely normal and manageable. But sometimes we need to ask for help when we feel out of control. And we need to talk about what's going on, even if that vulnerability scares us beyond measure. Because I think that when everybody around us is walking on eggshells, nothing productive is happening.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat about that for Judge Lynn. Judge Lynn, they want to know in the chat, how did you take yourself out of that role and realize that everyone else's, mental well-being and, non-angry was not your responsibility? How did you transition out of that role?
It took about 18 months to 2 years to do. And my mother walked me through it, and she said, what you need to do is stop being afraid of having an argument. Because to me, the argument was the end of the world, because I never thought I knew how it was going to end. So you got to be afraid. And I said, I want you to argue with him a couple of times. And he's, well, what if he says he's going to leave? I said, see how far he goes. You know what I mean? Just see. I mean, are you going to not buy the kind of ketchup you want because you're afraid he's going to go? Do you hear yourself? And then you have a couple of those arguments, and he's really nonplussed because you haven't argued with him for 15 years. So he's like, who is this chick? And what did she do with my wife? And then you got to get through that. And that's really staticky because I've taken away a right of his, which was a right to be right all the time. Mm-hmm. And then once we got into the pattern of having the argument, you can't lose your mind. State your position, stand your ground. And he will turn the corner after you turn it. That's me, my mom talking to me. He will turn the corner after you do, but you got to go first. Because you're the one that taught him he's always supposed to have his way. You're the one to teach him that every once in a while, you're supposed to get your way too. And he's happier now that I have an opinion than I was when I was always saying, yeah, baby, and didn't mean it. Because I was mad all the time. I was resentful and I was angry. And, and I was not pleasant.
And it's
that's
so
important. Oh,
I was just going to say it's so important, Dr. Ish, that she said that timeline, because so many times people try to rush things. And if you think of just pure relationship development straight from the textbooks, 18 months to build real trust. That's the battle between trust and mistrust. And when you have more trust than trust, even trust in yourself, then you start to develop hope. And I might say this every single call. You have to know the difference between self-confidence and self-esteem. Self-confidence is your belief in yourself. Self-esteem is what you think others think about you. And it's really important to get that differentiation in place, because that's what changes everything. You have to believe that you're worthy of making your own decisions. And one of the other questions in the chat is for Dr. Ish, and it's about when you have fear, what's the best way to kind of just deal with it first? So if you know you have fear, what's the first thing you can do?
Well, that's a good question. You know, my dad was a man of few words until he was a man of many words when it was time. So he would get it. So one of the things that he would always tell me is study yourself, right? He'd see me doing something stupid and he'd be like, he would say, study yourself, boy, which means stop and understand why it is you're doing what you're doing right now, right? You can do whatever you want to do and feel however you want to feel. It's all valid. But his point to me was, I just need you to understand why. And then once you understand that, now you proceed accordingly. And so when you first feel that fear, I think you've got to understand that it's okay. You know what I mean? It's okay to be scared. There's you know, growing up as a kid, I was an anxious, I was a nervous. No, there was something happening that scared me every single day. And so that part's okay. But what you're going to do is now you're going to assess the true meaning of the threat, right? Is this a little threat, a medium-sized threat, or a large threat? Let's see, what can I compare it to? What's the last thing that happened that's something like this, all right? Did that thing kill me? Well, I'm sitting here asking the question, so I guess it didn't kill me. This probably ain't gonna kill me either, right? We just took it down a threat level. And now you're gonna understand, you know, what can I do just to kind of help feel better? Who can I call? What can I read? What kind of questions can I ask? What can I do? And one of the main things for me, and it still helps me to this day, is really just to breathe, you know, just take a minute. This is all that pause. What are you doing when you're pausing? For me, I'm breathing. I'm breathing 4 breaths in. I mean, count of 4 in through my nose. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Dr. Ish, are you reading my mind? Because you know what time it is. If you've seen our Instagram or you've looked at our Facebook, you know that as part of this weekly show that we're doing, we are going to have a 1-minute mindfulness challenge. And so everybody take your deep breath. We're starting the clock now. And Alyssa, the minute is yours.
If you're comfortable, you can sit and close your eyes. Imagine breathing in vitality and breathing out stress. Breathing in compassion and breathing out frustration. Breathing in grace and breathing out anger. Breathing in health, breathing out dis-ease. Breathing in love. Breathing out hate. Breathing in peace. Breathing out sorrow. And with that last deep breath, breathe in joy. And there you go. Just 1 minute, committed to yourself. Breath's always available. It's the one thing that we have at our disposal, and it's a luxury. Many right now are afflicted with lung issues because of COVID, so I have upped my relationship with breath. Every breath is a gift, and it's free, and every single person has it at their disposal. So the next time you feel like screaming, ask yourself why, pause, really just find where that anger is in your body and breathe into it and let it go. The conversation's not going anywhere. You can address it when you're more calm and equipped to really be productive and generous of spirit.
That's so true, because with every breath you take, wherever your problems are, no matter where you go, you can pause for a little while, and guess what? When you're done pausing, The problems will be right there waiting for you. I promise. They're not going anywhere. Judge Lynn, what do you think? In summing it up for tonight and what's going on in the world right now, what are some things that we need to be focused on this week, about life?
I think the word pause is just ringing in my ears. A pause for the cause of rational, a pause for the cause of sane, a pause for the cause of taking joys whenever you can get it. Stop worrying for a minute and take a minute and do something joyful. And, manage yourself. If we all managed ourselves, we wouldn't be in such a state of consternation all the time. Manage yourself.
Yeah, that's a very good lesson.
Yeah.
And when you take that manage yourself and kind of transition it into love, Dr. Ish, what are some quick tips for loving yourself and others to the highest degree?
Yeah, that's a common question. Everybody thinks it's so hard. I think about what you would do to show somebody, to prove to somebody you love them, right? What would you do, right? Would you give them a gift? Would you say a kind word? What kind of special thing would you do for them? How would you look at them, right? What kind of words would you say, right? Now, do one of those things for yourself. That's it, right? It's a human thing. The way you would give it is the way you also probably would like to receive it. And so just turn around and do that thing for yourself. Give yourself a surprise gift. Order something from Amazon and forget about it. And then be surprised when it shows up, right? Look in the mirror, right? Look in the mirror and smile at yourself and tell yourself, hey, beautiful. Hey, handsome. It's okay. What are those things? The same things that you do that would make somebody else feel good. You're human too. So it follows that would probably make me feel good. And so just do that for yourself. Learn how to self-soothe, learn how to self-love. That way, the more you're looking towards you to fill that cup up, the less you got to look out there and realize how half empty that cup might be.
Certainly wise advice on life, love, and lessons. I'd like to thank each one of you for taking time out of your busy week. And I'd like to especially thank the folks who tuned in on Facebook. Remember to share this when we replay it back, because again, this is valuable information that has taken years of strong discipline within ourselves to really accumulate. And we're just happy to share it with you. None of us are paid. We're doing this on our own volition because we just think it's really important. So thank you, Judge Lynn. Thank you, Dr. Ish. Thank you, Alyssa. And I just want to close out with a thought. And the thought is that love makes the world go round. And it first starts with self-love, not a vanity love, but a sanity love. You have to stop self-sabotaging yourself with criticism, self-anger, hatred, and negative thinking, and comparing yourself to others. The race is only with yourself. From your first breath when you're born to the last breath you take, your breath is your unique and special superpower, and that is life, love, and lessons.
Bye, guys.
You can stay on. You can stay on. We're good. We're all done recording. We're stopped. It's just us.
Get yourself over here now. Don't wait for your heart to mend. You should know by now I'm not a fair weather friend. When it looks like I don't have the time, well, don't you be too sure. When it seems like I'm running out of time, for you I'll find some more. When you get a little downtime, call on